I was lounging on the couch, absently flipping through TV channels, when a loud crash echoed from the kitchen. Startled, I rushed in to find my wife, Alice, hastily shutting her phone and trying to mask the anxiety on her face. "What was that?" I asked, my eyes darting around the kitchen for the source of the noise. Alice smiled nervously, pointing to a fallen pot on the floor. "Oh, just a clumsy moment," she said, but her voice was strained, and her hands were trembling slightly. This wasn't the first time I'd noticed odd behavior from her over the past few months. Late nights at work, secretive phone calls, and a growing distance between us. My gut told me something was wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something from me. Alice worked at a high-end restaurant downtown, a place she adored. She often stayed late to help her colleagues or handle demanding customers. It was her passion, and I admired her dedication. But recently, she'd been mentioning a new regular customer, John, more often than usual. At first, I thought nothing of it. After all, she often talked about her work and the people she met. But as the months passed, the name John started to trigger my suspicions. One evening, while Alice was on the phone, I overheard snippets of her conversation. She was talking to John and laughing in a way she hadn't with me in a long time. My heart sank. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just my imagination, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Determined to uncover the truth, I waited for a moment when Alice wasn't around and checked her phone. What I found confirmed my worst fears. There were dozens of messages from John, filled with jokes, personal details, and sentiments that went far beyond a mere customer relationship. My mind was racing. I needed to know more. The next day, I followed her after work. My suspicions were confirmed when I saw her get into John's car and drive off together. They didn't see me, and I didn't follow them further. Instead, I went to her restaurant and discreetly asked her colleagues about John. They confirmed that Alice and John often spent time together after hours. That night, when Alice came home, I couldn't hold back any longer. "Who is John, really?" I demanded, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and hurt. She denied everything, her eyes wide with fear, but I had already seen the truth in those text messages. The next morning, I found a note in her purse from John, filled with romantic sentiments. It was the final piece of evidence I needed. My heart shattered as I confronted her with the note. She broke down, admitting to the affair, claiming she was confused and didn't know what she wanted anymore. The emotional pain was unbearable. The woman I loved had betrayed me, and I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. I decided to meet John face to face. Surprisingly, he didn't deny their relationship and even apologized. His sincerity only made it worse. In the end, I knew what I had to do. I filed for divorce. It was the hardest decision of my life, but I couldn't stay in a marriage built on lies. The process was agonizing, but eventually, I started to rebuild my life. Slowly, I began to heal and find the strength to move forward. After that unsettling night in the kitchen, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Alice's behavior had become more erratic, and my suspicions were growing by the day. She continued to stay late at work, always with some plausible excuse about extra duties or helping out a colleague. But her laughter on the phone with John haunted me. One evening, as Alice got ready to leave for another late shift, I decided to follow her. I waited a few minutes after she left and then quietly slipped out of the house. Keeping a safe distance, I watched as she drove to the restaurant. To my surprise, she didn't go inside. Instead, she parked and sat in her car, seemingly waiting for someone. My heart raced as I saw John's car pull up beside hers. She got out and slipped into his passenger seat. They sat there talking and laughing before driving off together. I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak, but I needed more than just suspicions and a few minutes of observation. Determined to uncover the truth, I returned home and waited for Alice. When she finally came back, hours later, I acted as if nothing was wrong, but the seed of doubt had taken root, and I was determined to dig deeper. The next day, while Alice was at work, I decided to take a closer look at her phone again. I knew it was an invasion of privacy, but I felt I had no other choice. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Text messages between her and John were filled with flirtation and intimate details, making it clear that their relationship was far from innocent. I needed confirmation from someone who could provide more context. I went to the restaurant during a quiet afternoon and found Jane, a longtime hostess who had always been friendly with me. After exchanging pleasantries, I gently probed about Alice's recent behavior. Jane, has Alice seemed different to you lately? More distracted, perhaps? I asked, trying to sound casual. Jane hesitated for a moment, then sighed. I didn't want to say anything, but yeah, she's been spending a lot of time with this guy, John. They're always together after her shift ends. It's been the talk among some of the staff. Her words were like a punch to the gut. I thanked her and left, feeling a mix of anger and sorrow. The pieces were falling into place, and it was clear that Alice had been deceiving me for months. That night, I couldn't keep my emotions in check any longer. Alice, we need to talk, I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. I showed her the messages I had found and confronted her with what I had learned. She tried to deny it at first, but the evidence was undeniable. Finally, she broke down, admitting that she had developed feelings for John. She claimed she was confused and never meant to hurt me, but her words felt empty and insincere. The emotional toll was immense, and I struggled with feelings of betrayal and loss. Alice suggested we try counseling, but I wasn't sure if our marriage could be saved. The trust between us was shattered, and I didn't know if it could ever be rebuilt. The tension in our home became unbearable. Every interaction with Alice felt like walking on eggshells. Her attempts to apologize and explain herself only deepened my sense of betrayal. I couldn't look at her without picturing her with John, and it was tearing me apart. Despite my better judgment, I agreed to try counseling. I wanted to believe that our marriage could be saved, that we could somehow rebuild the trust that had been shattered. We started seeing Dr. Thompson, a marriage counselor recommended by a friend. Our first session was painfully awkward. Alice and I sat on opposite ends of the couch, avoiding eye contact as Dr. Thompson tried to guide us through our feelings. Let's start by talking about why you're here, Dr. Thompson said gently. What do you hope to achieve through counseling? Alice spoke first, her voice trembling. I want to make things right. I know I made a terrible mistake, and I want to fix our marriage. I remained silent, my thoughts a whirlwind of anger and sadness. When Dr. Thompson turned to me, I struggled to find the words. I don't know if we can fix this, I admitted finally. I don't know if I can ever trust her again. The sessions continued, each one peeling back more layers of pain and resentment. Alice tried to explain how she had felt neglected, how John had given her the attention and affection she craved. Her words stung, but they also forced me to confront my own shortcomings. I had been so absorbed in my work, in my own life, that I had failed to see her slipping away. Despite these revelations, the anger inside me only grew. One night after a particularly intense session, I couldn't hold back any longer. Why John? I demanded. Why him of all people? Alice looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. He listened to me. He made me feel special, like I mattered. I know it's no excuse, but that's how it happened. Her words felt like a slap in the face. I had always tried to be a good husband, but somewhere along the line, I had failed her. It was a bitter pill to swallow. In the midst of this emotional turmoil, I decided to meet John face to face. I needed to hear his side of the story, to understand what had drawn Alice to him. I found him at a coffee shop one afternoon and approached his table. John? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. Can we talk? He looked up, surprised but not hostile. Sure, he said, gesturing to the empty seat across from him. I guess you have a lot of questions. As we talked, John didn't try to justify his actions. He admitted that he had developed feelings for Alice and that he had pursued her, despite knowing she was married. His honesty was disarming, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. I'm sorry for what I've done, he said finally. I never meant to hurt you. If I could go back and change things, I would. His apology didn't absolve him of his actions, but it gave me a sense of closure. I realized that as much as I hated what had happened, I couldn't let it define my future. Returning home, I knew I had a decision to make. Alice and I could continue counseling, trying to rebuild our broken marriage, or we could accept that too much damage had been done and move on separately. The path ahead was unclear, but for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope that, no matter what, I would find a way through this pain. The weeks following my meeting with John were a blur of emotional highs and lows. Counseling sessions with Alice continued, but each one seemed to dredge up more pain than progress. We were both trying, but the wounds ran deep. One evening, after another exhausting session with Dr. Thompson, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. The cool evening air was a welcome respite from the suffocating tension at home. As I walked through the quiet streets, memories of our happier times together flooded my mind. Our wedding day, the vacations, the simple moments of laughter and joy. It felt like another lifetime. When I returned home, Alice was sitting on the couch looking lost in thought. I sat down across from her, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. Finally, I broke the silence. "Alice, I need to understand why," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "How did it come to this?" She looked up at me, her eyes red from crying. "I don't know," she said, shaking her head. "I never wanted to hurt you, but somewhere along the way, I felt like we lost each other. John was there when I needed someone. It doesn't excuse what I did, but that's the truth." Her words stung, but they also forced me to confront my own role in our deteriorating relationship. I had been so focused on my career, on providing for us, that I had neglected the emotional connection that bound us together. I realized that in many ways, I had taken Alice for granted. "I guess we both let things slip," I admitted. "I should have been there for you more, listened more. But I can't change the past. All we can do is figure out where we go from here." Alice nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I still love you," she said softly. "I want to make this work, but I know it's going to be hard." As difficult as it was to hear, I appreciated her honesty. We both had a long way to go, and I wasn't sure if we could ever fully heal from this betrayal. But I knew that if we had any chance of saving our marriage, we needed to be completely open with each other. The next few weeks were a test of our resolve. We continued counseling, delving deeper into the issues that had led to Alice's affair. It was painful and exhausting, but there were small moments of progress. An honest conversation here, a shared laugh there. These glimpses of hope kept me going, even when the road seemed impossibly tough. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, Alice suggested we take a break from the heavy conversations and try to reconnect in simpler ways. "Let's go out to dinner," she proposed. "Just the two of us, like we used to." I hesitated, unsure if I was ready for something that felt so normal, but eventually agreed. We chose a quiet restaurant, far from the one where Alice worked, hoping for some semblance of privacy and normalcy. As we sat across from each other, the initial awkwardness gave way to a more relaxed atmosphere. We talked about everything but the affair, our favorite movies, plans for the future, funny memories from our early years together. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of the connection we once had. After dinner, we took a walk by the river, the cool night air refreshing and calming. Alice slipped her hand into mine, a tentative gesture that felt both familiar and foreign. We walked in silence, the sound of the water and the distant hum of the city our only companions. In that moment, I realized that despite everything, I still loved Alice. The road to recovery would be long and difficult, but I was willing to try. As we stood by the river watching the lights of the city dance on the water, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. The glimmers of hope from our evening out began to fade as the reality of our situation settled back in. Despite our efforts to reconnect, the shadow of Alice's affair with John loomed large over us. Trust was still a distant memory, and the emotional wounds were far from healed. One weekend, while Alice was at work, I decided to clean out the garage, a task I'd been putting off for months. As I sorted through boxes of old memories, I stumbled upon our wedding album. I sat down on the cold concrete floor and began flipping through the pages. The photos showed a happier time when our smiles were genuine and our love felt unbreakable. Tears welled up in my eyes as I wondered how we had reached this point. That evening, I sat Alice down for another difficult conversation. "We need to talk," I said, my voice heavy with the weight of our shared pain. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not." Alice looked at me, her expression a mix of fear and resignation. "I know," she whispered. "What do you want to do?" "I need to know everything," I said firmly. "No more secrets. If we're going to try and rebuild this marriage, I need complete honesty from you." She nodded, and over the next few hours, she opened up about her relationship with John in painful detail. She told me how it started, how it progressed, and how she felt during each stage. It was excruciating to hear, but it also brought a sense of clarity. For the first time, I understood the full extent of her betrayal and the reasons behind it. When she finished, We sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. Finally, I broke the silence. "Thank you for being honest," I said quietly. "I needed to hear it, even if it hurts." Alice reached for my hand, and I didn't pull away. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But I promise I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." The days that followed were a roller coaster of emotions. Some days I felt a glimmer of hope that we could rebuild our marriage. Other days the pain and anger threatened to overwhelm me. Alice was patient, giving me space when I needed it, and being there for me when I was ready to talk. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I realized that I couldn't move forward without letting go of the past. Holding on to the anger and betrayal was only hurting us both. "I want to try," I said, breaking the silence. "I want to see if we can rebuild what we had." Alice's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of relief. "I want that too," she said softly, "more than anything." We decided to take things one day at a time, focusing on rebuilding our trust and reconnecting on a deeper level. We made a commitment to be open and honest with each other, no matter how difficult the conversations might be. Slowly, we began to find our way back to each other. We went on dates, talked late into the night, and started to rediscover the things that had brought us together in the first place. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of doubt and pain, but we were making progress. One afternoon, as we walked through the park hand in hand, I realized that we had come a long way from the shattered state we had been in just a few months earlier. The road to recovery was still long, but for the first time, I believed that we could make it. As we sat on a bench watching the sun set over the horizon, I turned to Alice. "I love you," I said, my voice filled with sincerity. She smiled, her eyes shining with hope. "I love you too," she replied. In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Just as we began to feel a semblance of normalcy returning to our lives, life decided to test our newfound resolve. One evening, Alice came home from work looking unusually pale and shaken. "What's wrong?" I asked, concerned. She hesitated, then sat down heavily on the couch. "John showed up at the restaurant today," she said, her voice trembling. "He wanted to talk." My heart sank. "What did he want?" Alice looked up at me, her eyes filled with fear. "He said he misses me and wants to see if we can start over. He didn't care that we're trying to work things out. He was persistent." Anger surged through me, but I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "And what did you say?" "I told him no," Alice said firmly. "I told him that I'm committed to making our marriage work and that he needs to respect that, but he didn't take it well." The next few days were tense. I worried that John's presence might reignite old feelings in Alice, or worse, that he would continue to pursue her. We talked about setting boundaries and how to handle any future encounters with him. Alice assured me that she was fully committed to our relationship, but the fear lingered in the back of my mind. One evening, as we were having dinner, Alice's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and her face paled. "It's John," she said quietly. I felt a knot form in my stomach. "What does he want now?" "He says he needs to talk to me, that it's urgent," Alice replied, her voice shaking. "I don't know what to do." After a long silence, I finally spoke. "I think you should block his number and avoid any contact with him. If he keeps bothering you, we might need to consider a restraining order." Alice nodded, visibly relieved. "You're right. I can't let him come between us again." That night, we blocked John's number on Alice's phone and discussed how to handle any unexpected encounters at her workplace. It was a difficult conversation, but it brought us closer together. We were united in our resolve to protect our relationship from further harm. Despite our precautions, John continued to make his presence known. He showed up at the restaurant several more times, each time causing Alice distress. Finally, we decided it was time to take more serious action. Alice spoke to her manager, who agreed to intervene and warned John to stay away. If he didn't, we would involve the authorities. The confrontation with John left us both emotionally drained, but it also reinforced our commitment to each other. We continued our counseling sessions with Dr. Thompson, focusing on rebuilding trust and strengthening our emotional connection. Each session brought us a little closer to healing, and we began to see real progress. One weekend, we decided to take a short trip to the countryside, hoping to escape the stress and reconnect in a peaceful setting. The change of scenery worked wonders. We spent our days hiking, exploring quaint little towns, and talking about our future. It felt like a fresh start, a chance to rebuild our relationship away from the shadows of the past. As we sat by the fire one evening, Alice turned to me and said, "Thank you for giving us another chance. I know it's been hard, but I truly believe we can make it through this." I smiled, feeling a warmth in my heart that I hadn't felt in a long time. I believe that too. We've come a long way and I'm proud of us. The trip brought us closer, and when we returned home, we felt more connected and hopeful than ever. We knew there would still be challenges ahead, but we were ready to face them together. Our love had been tested, and while it had been scarred, it had also grown stronger. We were no longer the same people we had been before the affair, but perhaps that was a good thing. We were wiser, more resilient, and more committed to each other than ever before. As we settled back into our routine after the trip, a sense of calm finally seemed to take hold. Alice and I were more connected than we had been in months, and our relationship felt like it was on the mend. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. One evening, while we were watching a movie together, Alice's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at it and frowned. "It's an email from John," she said, her voice tinged with frustration. "I thought we had blocked all his contact. Maybe he found another way to reach you," I suggested, my anxiety rising. "What does he want now?" Alice opened the email, her eyes scanning the screen. Her face went pale and she handed me the phone without saying a word. I took it and read the message. John was threatening to expose their affair publicly if Alice didn't meet with him one last time. He claimed to have photos and messages that he would send to everyone we knew, including my workplace. The threat felt like a punch to the gut. We had worked so hard to move past this, and now it seemed like John was determined to drag us back into the chaos. I looked at Alice, seeing the fear and guilt in her eyes. "We can't let him do this to us," I said firmly. "We need to take action." The next morning, we contacted a lawyer who specialized in harassment and cybercrime. He advised us to gather all the evidence we had and to file for a restraining order against John. We spent the next few days compiling everything: emails, text messages, and records of his visits to the restaurant. Once we had everything, we filed the restraining order. The legal process was stressful, but it also felt empowering. We were taking control of the situation, refusing to be victims of John's manipulations. As we waited for the court date, I noticed a change in Alice. She seemed more determined, more resolved to protect our relationship. "I won't let him destroy what we have," she said one night as we prepared for bed. "I'm willing to fight for us." Her words gave me strength. We were in this together, facing the threat head on. The court date arrived, and we stood side by side as our lawyer presented our case. John showed up looking defiant, but his threats and harassment were undeniable. The judge granted the restraining order, and John was warned to stay away from us or face legal consequences. With the restraining order in place, a weight lifted off our shoulders. We finally felt like we could breathe again, knowing that John could no longer interfere in our lives. It was a hard-fought victory, but it brought us closer together. In the weeks that followed, we continued to rebuild our lives. We focused on the positive, cherishing the small moments of joy and connection. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Alice turned to me and said, "I know we've been through so much, but I feel like we're stronger now, like we can face anything together." I took her hand in mine, feeling a sense of peace that had eluded us for so long. "I feel the same way," I said. "We've been tested, but we've come out the other side. I love you, Alice." "I love you too," she replied, her eyes shining with sincerity. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we sat in silence, enjoying the simple pleasure of being together. Our journey had been painful and challenging, but it had also taught us the true meaning of commitment and resilience. We were not the same couple we had once been, but perhaps that was a good thing. We had faced the storm and emerged stronger, ready to face whatever the future might hold, hand in hand. With the restraining order against John in place, Alice and I began to focus on the process of truly rebuilding our relationship. Trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to repair, and we both knew that it would take time and consistent effort. Our counseling sessions with Dr. Thompson became less about processing the past and more about constructing a new foundation for our future. One of the first steps we took was to establish a set of ground rules for our relationship. We agreed to be completely transparent with each other, sharing our schedules, phone passwords, and even social media accounts. This level of openness was uncomfortable at first, but it was necessary for rebuilding trust. Alice also decided to look for a new job. Working at the restaurant where her affair with John had started was a constant reminder of the past, and she wanted a fresh start. After several interviews, she found a position at a different restaurant on the other side of town. The change was a positive one, and I could see the relief on her face as she settled into her new routine. One evening, Alice suggested we take up a hobby together, something that would help us reconnect on a different level. We decided to start hiking, exploring the many trails and parks around our city. Our weekends were soon filled with long walks in nature, where we talked about everything and nothing, enjoying each other's company without the pressure of our past hanging over us. During one of our hikes, Alice brought up an idea that took me by surprise. "I think we should renew our vows," she said, her eyes searching mine for a reaction. I stopped in my tracks, caught off guard. "Renew our vows?" I repeated, trying to process the idea. "Yes," she said, taking my hand. "I want to reaffirm our commitment to each other, to show that we're starting anew. It's not about forgetting the past, but about acknowledging how far we've come and where we want to go." Her words resonated with me. Renewing our vows felt like a meaningful way to close one chapter and begin another. "I think that's a wonderful idea," I said, smiling. We began planning a small, intimate ceremony with just close family and friends. It wasn't about the grand gestures or elaborate preparations. It was about the promise we were making to each other. As the day approached, I found myself feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. The ceremony took place in a beautiful park we had discovered on one of our hikes. Surrounded by the people who mattered most to us, we stood under a canopy of trees and exchanged our vows. This time the words held a deeper meaning. We had been through so much, and our commitment to each other had been tested in ways we never could have imagined. As I looked into Alice's eyes, I felt a sense of peace and certainty. "I promise to always be honest with you, to listen and support you, and to never take our love for granted," I said, my voice steady. Alice's eyes glistened with tears as she spoke her vows. "I promise to be faithful to you, to work through our challenges together, and to always choose us, no matter what." After the ceremony, we celebrated with a small reception, filled with laughter and joy. It felt like a new beginning, a chance to rebuild our lives on a stronger foundation. In the weeks and months that followed, Alice and I continued to work on our relationship. There were still moments of doubt and insecurity, but we faced them together, always communicating openly and honestly. Our trust grew slowly but steadily, and the love we had for each other deepened. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I realized how far we had come. The journey had been incredibly difficult, but it had also brought us closer in ways I never thought possible. We were no longer just husband and wife. We were partners, united by a bond that had been forged in the fires of adversity. As the sky turned a brilliant shade of orange and pink, I turned to Alice and smiled. "Thank you for not giving up on us," I said softly. She reached for my hand and squeezed it gently. "Thank you for believing in us," she replied. In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Our love had been tested, but it had emerged stronger and more resilient, and for that, I was eternally grateful. With the vow renewal ceremony behind us, Alice and I felt more connected than ever. The simple act of reaffirming our commitment to each other had infused our relationship with a newfound sense of purpose. But as we moved forward, I knew that the past still lingered, casting shadows that neither of us could ignore. One afternoon, I received a call from an old college friend, Michael. He and his wife, Rebecca, were visiting our city and wanted to catch up. I hadn't seen Michael in years, and the idea of reconnecting with him sounded like a welcome distraction. Alice agreed, and we made plans to meet them for dinner. The evening started pleasantly enough. We reminisced about our college days, laughed at old stories, and enjoyed the company. But as the conversation turned more personal, I found myself growing increasingly uncomfortable. "So, how have things been with you two?" Michael asked, his tone casual but curious. Alice and I exchanged a glance. We had agreed to be honest about our journey, but the details of our struggles weren't easy to share. "It's been a challenging year," I said carefully. "We've had our ups and downs, but we're working through it." Rebecca leaned in, her eyes filled with genuine concern. "Is everything okay? You seem different." Alice took a deep breath, her hand finding mine under the table. "We've been through a lot," she said softly, "but we're stronger for it." Michael and Rebecca exchanged a look. Their curiosity piqued. "If you don't mind sharing," Michael said, "what happened?" The weight of their question hung in the air. I could feel Alice's tension, her grip tightening on my hand. I decided to take the lead. "Alice had an affair," I said, the words heavy but necessary. "It was a difficult time, but we've been working hard to rebuild our relationship." There was a moment of stunned silence. Michael and Rebecca's expressions shifted from curiosity to shock, then to empathy. "I'm so sorry to hear that," Rebecca said gently. "It must have been incredibly hard for both of you." "It was," Alice admitted. "But we've learned a lot about ourselves and each other. It's made us stronger, even though it was painful." Michael nodded, his respect for us evident. "It takes a lot of courage to face something like that head on. I'm glad to see you're both committed to making it work." The conversation turned to lighter topics after that, but the vulnerability of that moment lingered with me. It was a reminder that, while we had made significant progress, the scars of the past were still present. Later that night, as we lay in bed, Alice turned to me. "Do you regret it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Regret what?" I replied, turning to face her. "Staying with me," she said, her eyes searching mine for reassurance. "After everything that's happened, do you ever wish you had walked away?" I took a moment to consider her question, feeling the weight of our shared history. "No," I said finally. "I don't regret it. We've been through hell, but we've also found a deeper connection. I love you, Alice, and I believe in us." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she leaned in to kiss me. "I love you too," she whispered. As the days turned into weeks, we continued to face the shadows of the past together. There were moments of doubt and insecurity, but we always returned to the commitment we had made to each other. Counseling sessions with Dr. Thompson remained a cornerstone of our recovery, helping us navigate the complex emotions that surfaced. One evening, after a particularly intense session, Alice suggested we take a break from our usual routine. "Let's go away for a weekend," she proposed. "Just the two of us, somewhere quiet where we can focus on each other." The idea of an escape sounded perfect. We booked a cabin in the mountains, a secluded spot surrounded by nature. As we drove up winding roads, the tension of the past months seemed to melt away. The air was crisp, and the landscape breathtaking. At the cabin, we spent our days hiking, reading by the fire, and simply enjoying each other's company. One night, as we sat on the porch under a canopy of stars, Alice turned to me. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked. "All the time," I replied, taking her hand. "I think about what we've been through and how it's shaped us. I think about the life we can build together, stronger and more resilient." She smiled, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "I want that too. I want to keep moving forward, facing whatever comes our way together." In that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace. The shadows of the past might still be there, but they no longer defined us. We had faced them, and we had emerged stronger. Our journey was far from over, but we were ready for whatever lay ahead, united in our commitment to each other. The cabin retreat was a turning point for us. The serenity of the mountains had allowed us to reconnect on a deeper level, away from the stresses of our daily lives. As we returned to our city and re-entered our routines, the sense of renewal we felt was palpable. We were more determined than ever to embrace our new beginning with open hearts and minds. Alice and I had made significant strides in rebuilding our relationship, but we knew that continued effort and intention were crucial. One of the first things we decided to do was to create new traditions and routines that would strengthen our bond and help us move forward. We began by setting aside dedicated date nights each week. Whether it was trying a new restaurant, cooking dinner together at home, or simply watching a movie, these evenings became a cornerstone of our renewed connection. They were a time for us to focus solely on each other, to enjoy each other's company, and to keep the romance alive. In addition to our weekly date nights, we also started working on individual goals and passions. Alice took up painting, something she had always wanted to explore but never had the time for. Her creativity flourished, and her new hobby brought a fresh energy into our home. I, on the other hand, started volunteering at a local community center, finding fulfillment in giving back and engaging with others. We also made an effort to strengthen our relationships with friends and family. Reconnecting with loved ones provided us with a support network that had been invaluable during our struggles. We hosted small gatherings and spent more time with those who mattered to us, sharing our journey and celebrating our progress. One evening, as we sat on the porch enjoying a quiet sunset, Alice turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she said, "I've been thinking about how much we've been through and how far we've come. It feels like we're finally in a good place." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "I agree. We've worked hard to get here, and I'm proud of what we've achieved together. We've faced so many challenges, but we have also grown stronger and closer." Alice reached for my hand, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the setting sun. "I'm looking forward to the future. I know there will still be challenges, but I believe we can face them together." We continued to focus on our relationship, but we also made time for individual growth. Alice's painting became a symbol of her resilience and creativity, and I found joy in my community work. Our lives were beginning to feel more balanced, and we were learning to appreciate the small moments of happiness that came our way. One day, while we were hiking on one of our favorite trails, Alice suggested we set new goals for ourselves as a couple. "What do you think about making a list of things we want to achieve together?" she proposed. I smiled, feeling a sense of excitement. "That sounds like a great idea. What should be on our list?" Alice thought for a moment. "How about traveling to a new place every year, taking up new hobbies together, and continuing to strengthen our relationship?" I nodded enthusiastically. "I love it. Let's start working on our list and make the most of every moment we have together." We spent the rest of the hike discussing our dreams and aspirations, imagining the adventures and experiences we wanted to share. It felt invigorating to think about the future with hope and optimism. As the months passed, we continued to build on our goals and create new memories. Our relationship was no longer defined by the past, but by the love and commitment we had for each other. We celebrated anniversaries and milestones, both big and small, and cherished the journey we were on. One evening, as we sat together on the porch, reflecting on our journey, I realized that we had come full circle. The pain and challenges we had faced had ultimately brought us closer together, strengthening our bond and deepening our love. Alice turned to me with a contented smile. "Thank you for being with me through all of this. I'm so grateful for our journey and the new beginning we're embracing." I took her hand and kissed it gently. "Thank you for never giving up on us. Our journey has been difficult, but it's also been beautiful. I wouldn't trade it for anything." As the sun set and the stars began to shine, we sat in comfortable silence, knowing that our future was bright and full of possibilities. We had faced the shadows of our past and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the new beginning that lay ahead. Together, we were ready to face whatever challenges came our way, with love, hope, and unwavering commitment. Life was finally beginning to feel settled and stable. Our new routines and traditions were becoming second nature, and the shadows of the past seemed to be fading. But one evening, an unexpected visitor brought those shadows back into sharp focus. It was a Friday night, and Alice and I had just finished dinner. We were sitting in the living room, discussing our plans for the weekend, when the doorbell rang. I got up to answer it, not expecting anyone. When I opened the door, I was stunned to see John standing there. He looked different, disheveled and desperate. His eyes were bloodshot, and he had a wild, almost haunted look about him. "We need to talk," he said, his voice shaky. Anger and fear surged through me. "What are you doing here?" I demanded. "We have a restraining order against you. You need to leave." John took a step closer, his expression pleading. "Please, just hear me out. I don't have anywhere else to go." Before I could respond, Alice appeared beside me. She gasped when she saw John. "What are you doing here?" she echoed, her voice trembling. John looked at her, his eyes filled with a mix of regret and desperation. "I lost everything, Alice. My job, my apartment, everything. I have nowhere else to turn. Please, just let me explain." I felt a protective instinct rise within me. You need to leave, I repeated firmly. You can't be here. John's shoulders slumped, and he looked like he was about to collapse. Please, he whispered. I just need a chance to make things right. Alice and I exchanged a glance. Despite everything that had happened, I could see the conflict in her eyes. She had always been compassionate, and seeing someone in such a state clearly affected her. Let's hear him out, Alice said softly, her voice wavering, but only for a few minutes. Reluctantly, I stepped aside and let John in. We led him to the living room, where he sat down heavily on the couch. He took a deep breath, then began to speak. I know I've caused you both a lot of pain, he said, his voice cracking. I made a terrible mistake, and I've paid for it in ways I never imagined. I lost my job because of my behavior, and I was evicted from my apartment. I've been living in my car for weeks. As he spoke, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, pity, and a begrudging sense of empathy. John's actions had brought so much turmoil into our lives, but seeing him so broken was a stark reminder that everyone makes mistakes and suffers consequences. I don't expect forgiveness, John continued, his eyes downcast, but I wanted to apologize. I was selfish and reckless, and I hurt you both. I'm sorry. There was a long silence as we absorbed his words. Alice's eyes were filled with tears, and I could see the inner battle she was fighting. Finally, she spoke. Thank you for your apology, John. It means a lot to hear you say that, but we can't just forget what happened. You need to respect our boundaries. John nodded, his expression one of defeat. I understand. I needed to say it. I needed to try and make things right, even if it's too late. After a few more minutes of strained conversation, we asked John to leave. He stood up, thanked us for listening, and walked out the door. As I closed it behind him, I felt a heavy weight lift from my shoulders. Alice and I sat in silence for a while, processing the unexpected encounter. Finally, she spoke. Do you think he meant it? She asked quietly. I think he did, I replied, but it doesn't change what happened. We need to keep moving forward. Alice nodded, her eyes still shining with unshed tears. I know, it feels like another chapter closing. Maybe now we can truly put this behind us. In the days that followed, we found ourselves talking more about our future and less about the past. The unexpected visit from John had stirred up old emotions, but it had also provided a sense of closure. We had faced the shadows once more and emerged even stronger. Our relationship continued to grow and evolve. We made plans for new adventures, deepened our connections with friends and family, and focused on the life we were building together. The past would always be a part of our story, but it no longer defined us. As we moved forward, I felt a renewed sense of hope and gratitude. We had weathered the storm, faced our demons, and come out the other side more united than ever. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, I knew we could face them together, with love, resilience, and an unbreakable bond. After John's unexpected visit, Alice and I found ourselves in a reflective mood. The encounter had stirred up old wounds, but it also seemed to have provided a sense of closure we hadn't realized we needed. We were determined to move forward, stronger and more united than ever. One morning over breakfast, Alice looked at me thoughtfully. What do you think about moving? She asked, her eyes bright with excitement. I paused, surprised. Moving? Where to? Not far, she said quickly. Just a different part of town. A new house, a new neighborhood, a fresh start. I think it would be good for us. The idea took root in my mind. A new environment could symbolize the new chapter we were starting. I like that idea, I said, smiling. Let's look into it. We spent the next few weeks house hunting, exploring different neighborhoods and imagining our life in various homes. It was an exciting and hopeful time. We found a charming house with a spacious backyard, perfect for the life we envisioned. The moment we walked in, we both knew it was the one. Moving was a whirlwind of activity, but it felt like shedding the remnants of the past. As we unpacked boxes and arranged our new home, there was a palpable sense of optimism in the air. Each room we decorated became a symbol of our new beginning. One evening, after a long day of unpacking, we sat in our new living room, surrounded by boxes yet to be sorted. Alice leaned against me, her head resting on my shoulder. This feels right, she said softly. Like we're really starting fresh. I agree, I said, squeezing her hand. this house, this neighborhood. It all feels like a new chapter. Our new home quickly became a haven. We hosted dinners with friends and family, filling the rooms with laughter and love. Alice's painting studio, set up in a sunny corner of the house, became her sanctuary. I found peace in the backyard, planting a garden and enjoying the simple pleasure of watching things grow. Our new neighborhood was vibrant and welcoming. We made friends with our neighbors, joined local events, and became a part of the community. It was a stark contrast to the isolation we had felt before, and it brought us closer together. Alice and I continued our weekly date nights, exploring new restaurants and activities in our area. We also kept up with our individual pursuits, Alice's art and my volunteer work. These activities gave us a sense of fulfillment and balance. One sunny Saturday, as we were working in the garden, Alice paused and looked at me with a smile. "I've been thinking about something," she said. "Oh? What's that?" I asked, curious. "I think it's time we take a big step," she said, her eyes sparkling. "What do you think about starting a family?" The question caught me off guard, but in the best possible way. I had thought about it, of course, but hearing Alice say it filled me with a rush of joy and excitement. "I think that's a wonderful idea," I said, grinning. We talked about it more that evening, discussing our hopes and dreams for a family. It felt like the perfect next step in our journey. We had come so far, and now we were ready to embrace a new adventure together. The following months were filled with anticipation and hope. We focused on preparing our home and our hearts for this new chapter. Alice's pregnancy was a beautiful and transformative experience. We attended prenatal classes, decorated a nursery, and spent countless hours dreaming about the future. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I felt a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. Our journey had been filled with challenges and heartache, but it had also brought us closer and made us stronger. We had built a life filled with love, resilience, and hope. Alice took my hand and smiled. "We've come a long way," she said softly. "Yes, we have," I agreed, squeezing her hand gently. "And I wouldn't change a thing. Every step, every challenge, it's all brought us to this moment." As the sky darkened and the stars began to twinkle, we sat in comfortable silence, feeling the weight of our journey and the promise of our future. We were ready for whatever came next, knowing that we had each other, and that our love was strong enough to weather any storm. Our new beginning wasn't just about a new house or a fresh start. It was about embracing the life we had built together, with all its imperfections and beauty. It was about looking forward to the future with hope and joy, knowing that we were stronger together. As we prepared to welcome a new life into our family, we felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and excitement. Our journey had been difficult, but it had also been incredibly rewarding. And now, as we stood on the brink of this new adventure, we knew that the best was yet to come. The anticipation of welcoming a new member into our family brought a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Alice and I attended every prenatal appointment together, our bond growing stronger with each passing day. We read parenting books, set up the nursery, and talked late into the night about our hopes and dreams for our child. One crisp autumn morning, Alice woke me up, her eyes wide with a mix of excitement and fear. "I think it's time," she said, her voice trembling slightly. My heart raced as I jumped out of bed, quickly grabbing the hospital bag we had packed weeks earlier. We drove to the hospital in a flurry of nerves and anticipation. The hours that followed were intense, but Alice was incredibly strong, and I stayed by her side, holding her hand and offering words of encouragement. After what felt like an eternity, our baby girl was born. The moment I heard her first cry, a wave of emotion washed over me. Tears filled my eyes as I looked at Alice, her face glowing with a mix of exhaustion and joy. "We did it," I whispered, kissing her forehead. The nurses placed our daughter in Alice's arms, and I was overwhelmed with love and awe. She was perfect, a tiny miracle we had created together. "Welcome to the world, Lily," Alice said softly, her voice filled with wonder. I gently touched Lily's tiny hand, marveling at the new life before us. "She's beautiful," I said, my voice choked with emotion. The next few days in the hospital were a blur of feedings, diaper changes, and learning the ropes of parenthood. Alice and I were exhausted but blissfully happy. Our friends and family visited, showering us with love and support. The sense of community we had built over the past year felt even more meaningful as we introduced Lily to the world. Bringing Lily home was a surreal experience. Our once quiet house was now filled with the sounds of a newborn, and we quickly adapted to our new roles as parents. The sleepless nights and constant feedings were challenging, but every moment was worth it. One evening, as I rocked Lily to sleep in the nursery, I looked around at the room we had lovingly prepared for her. The walls were painted a soft lavender adorned with whimsical drawings of animals and flowers. A mobile hung above the crib, gently swaying and casting shadows on the walls. It was a space filled with love and dreams for our daughter's future. Alice appeared in the doorway, smiling as she watched us. "She's finally asleep?" she whispered, tiptoeing into the room. I nodded, gently placing Lily in her crib. "Yeah, she just drifted off." We stood there for a moment, watching our daughter sleep, our hearts overflowing with love and gratitude. "I can't believe she's really here," Alice said, her voice filled with wonder. "Me neither," I replied, wrapping my arm around her. "But she's here, and she's perfect." As we settled into our new routine, we found joy in the small moments. The way Lily's tiny fingers curled around ours, the sound of her soft coos, and the way she looked at us with wide, curious eyes. Each day brought new challenges and new joys, and we faced them together, united in our love for our daughter. Our friends and family continued to be a source of support and encouragement. Alice's parents visited often, delighted to spend time with their granddaughter. My parents, who lived out of state, made frequent trips to see us, their pride and joy evident in every visit. One afternoon, as we sat in the backyard watching Lily play on a blanket spread out on the grass, Alice turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about something," she said. "What's that?" I asked, curious. "I want to write a book," she said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "About our journey, everything we've been through. I think it could help others who might be going through something similar." The idea took me by surprise, but it made perfect sense. Alice had always been a gifted writer, and our story was one of resilience and hope. "I think that's a wonderful idea," I said, smiling. "Our story could inspire a lot of people." Alice's eyes sparkled with determination. "I'm going to do it. I'm going to write our story." In the months that followed, Alice devoted herself to her writing, pouring her heart and soul into the book. It became a therapeutic process for her, a way to reflect on our journey and find meaning in the struggles we had faced. As for me, I continued to find joy in my volunteer work and in being a father. Lily was growing quickly, her personality blossoming with each passing day. She brought laughter and love into our lives, and every milestone felt like a precious gift. One evening, as we sat together on the porch watching the sunset, I felt a profound sense of contentment. Our journey had been filled with challenges, but it had also brought us to this beautiful moment. We had faced our demons, rebuilt our lives, and now we were living a life filled with love and hope. Alice turned to me, her eyes filled with love. "Thank you for being my partner through all of this," she said softly. I took her hand and kissed it gently. "Thank you for never giving up on us," I replied. "Our journey has been difficult, but it's also been incredibly rewarding. And now with Lily, I feel like we're exactly where we're meant to be." As the sun dipped below the horizon, we sat in comfortable silence, knowing that our future was bright and full of possibilities. Our love had been tested, but it had emerged stronger than ever. And now, with our beautiful daughter in our lives, we were ready to embrace whatever adventures lay ahead, united in our love and commitment to each other. Life with Lily was a beautiful whirlwind. As Alice poured her heart into writing our story, I continued to immerse myself in fatherhood and my volunteer work. We were in a good place, feeling hopeful and content. But life has a way of testing even the strongest of bonds, and our next test came in the form of an unexpected confrontation. It was a sunny afternoon, and I was at the park with Lily. She was toddling around, giggling as she chased butterflies. I watched her with a smile, feeling a deep sense of happiness. Suddenly, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see John standing there. A mix of emotions surged through me: anger, fear, and confusion. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm so as not to alarm Lily. John looked different. He seemed more composed than the last time I had seen him, but there was a determined look in his eyes. "I need to talk to you, Matt," he said. I glanced at Lily, who was still playing happily. "This isn't the place for it," I said firmly. "Whatever you need to say, it can wait." "Please," John insisted, his voice low and urgent. Just a few minutes. It's important. Reluctantly, I nodded and led John to a bench where we could keep an eye on Lily. What is it? I asked, crossing my arms. John took a deep breath. I've been trying to make amends for my past mistakes. I went to rehab, got a steady job, and I've been seeing a therapist. I want to apologize again, properly this time, for everything I did to you and Alice. I stared at him, processing his words. Part of me wanted to believe him, to think that he had genuinely changed, but another part of me was wary, protective of the life we had rebuilt. Apologies are one thing, John, but actions speak louder. You've caused a lot of pain. John nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. I know, and I don't expect forgiveness, but I need to make things right. If not for me, then for you and Alice. I want to give you something. Closure, maybe. There are things you don't know, things I need to confess. My heart pounded in my chest. What are you talking about? John hesitated, then spoke quietly. The affair with Alice. It wasn't as straightforward as it seemed. I manipulated her, Matt. I took advantage of her vulnerability. I was selfish and driven by my own issues. She never wanted to hurt you. She loved you even then. Hearing his confession felt like reopening an old wound. The pain and betrayal resurfaced, but this time, there was a strange sense of clarity. Alice had already told me about her guilt and confusion, but hearing it from John gave it a new perspective. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, my voice strained. Because you deserve to know the truth, John said, and because I need to take responsibility for my actions. I can't change the past, but I can try to make amends. I'm truly sorry, Matt. I looked at him, seeing a man who was genuinely trying to make things right. It didn't erase the hurt, but it offered a small measure of peace. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. But this doesn't change what happened. We've moved on. We've rebuilt our lives. John nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. I know, and I'm glad. You and Alice deserve happiness. With that, he stood up and walked away, leaving me to process his words. I watched Lily playing, her laughter a soothing balm to my troubled heart. I realized that John's confession, while painful, also brought a sense of closure. It confirmed what Alice and I had already worked through, that our love had endured despite the challenges. That evening, I told Alice about my encounter with John. She listened quietly, her eyes reflecting a mix of emotions. I'm glad he told you, she said finally. I've been carrying that guilt for so long. Maybe now we can both truly move on. I took her hand, feeling a deep sense of connection and understanding. We've come so far, Alice, and we're stronger because of it. In the weeks that followed, we continued to focus on our family and our future. Alice's book was coming along beautifully, and she found a sense of catharsis in telling our story. I felt a renewed sense of purpose in my volunteer work and cherished every moment with Lily. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the stars, Alice turned to me with a thoughtful expression. You know, I think John's visit was a blessing in disguise, she said. It reminded us of how far we've come and how strong we are together. I nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. You're right. We've faced so many challenges, but we've also grown and found a love that's stronger than ever. As we held each other, watching the night sky, I knew that our journey was far from over. There would be more challenges, more tests of our strength and love. But I also knew that we were ready to face them, together. Our love had been tested and had emerged stronger, and now we were ready to embrace whatever the future held, united in our commitment to each other and our family. Time has a way of healing wounds and solidifying bonds. In the months following John's visit, our lives continued to evolve in beautiful and unexpected ways. Alice's book was finally complete, a heartfelt memoir of our journey through love, betrayal, and redemption. It was a labor of love that had brought her immense satisfaction and a sense of closure. The book's release was met with a wave of support and praise. Friends, family, and even strangers who read our story were touched by the raw honesty and resilience it portrayed. Alice had poured her heart into every page, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. One crisp spring morning, we received a call from a literary agent who was impressed with Alice's work. They wanted to represent her and help bring our story to a wider audience. It was a dream come true, and Alice was thrilled at the prospect of reaching even more people with our tale of love and perseverance. Our days were filled with a renewed sense of purpose and joy. Lily was growing quickly, her curiosity and laughter bringing light into our lives. She was the embodiment of our love and the hope we had for the future. Every moment with her was a reminder of how far we had come and the strength of our bond. One sunny afternoon, as we played in the park with Lily, Alice turned to me with a smile. "I have something to tell you," she said, her eyes twinkling with excitement. I raised an eyebrow, curious. "What's that?" She took a deep breath, her smile widening. "I'm pregnant." For a moment I was speechless, my heart swelling with joy and surprise. "Really?" I asked, my voice filled with awe. Alice nodded, tears of happiness in her eyes. "Yes, really. We're going to have another baby." I pulled her into a tight embrace, feeling overwhelmed with love and gratitude. "That's incredible news," I whispered. "I can't wait to meet our new little one." The months that followed were a whirlwind of preparation and anticipation. We relished every moment, cherishing the experience of preparing for our growing family. Alice's pregnancy brought a renewed sense of wonder and excitement into our lives. Our friends and family were overjoyed at the news. They showered us with love and support, helping us prepare for the arrival of our second child. It was a time of celebration and togetherness, and we felt incredibly blessed. One evening, as we sat together in the nursery, watching Lily play with her toys, Alice looked at me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked softly. I nodded, smiling. "All the time. Our journey has been filled with challenges, but it's also brought us so much joy and strength." Alice reached out and took my hand. "I'm so grateful for everything we've been through. It's made us who we are today." I squeezed her hand gently, feeling a deep sense of love and connection. "I wouldn't change a thing," I said. "Every step, every struggle, it's all led us to this beautiful moment." As we watched Lily play, I felt a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. Our journey had been a testament to the power of love, resilience, and the unbreakable bond we shared. We had faced our demons, rebuilt our lives, and created a family filled with love and hope. The day our second child was born was one of the happiest days of our lives. Holding our newborn son in my arms, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and joy. We named him James, a name that symbolized strength and perseverance. Lily was delighted to have a baby brother. She took on her new role as a big sister with enthusiasm and love, her laughter filling our home with joy. Watching our children together was a constant reminder of the beauty and resilience of life. As we settled into our new routine as a family of 4, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Our journey had been challenging, but it had also brought us incredible joy and fulfillment. We had faced the darkness and emerged into the light, stronger and more united than ever. One evening, as we sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Alice turned to me with a smile. "Do you ever wonder what the future holds?" she asked softly. I shook my head, smiling. "No, because I know that whatever comes, we'll face it together. Our love has seen us through everything, and it will continue to do so." Alice leaned against me, her eyes filled with love. "You're right. Our journey is just beginning, and I can't wait to see what adventures lie ahead." As the sun dipped below the horizon, we sat in comfortable silence, knowing that our future was bright and filled with possibilities. Our love had been tested and had emerged stronger, and now we were ready to embrace whatever the future held, united in our commitment to each other and our family. Our story was one of resilience, hope, and unbreakable love. It was a testament to the power of forgiveness, the strength of family, and the beauty of new beginnings. And as we looked toward the future, we knew that the best was yet to come.